did on GHK and AHK, he found that GHK could be used topically to help stimulate hair growth, and that people that were getting injections of GHK could see some hair growth as well. When he started experimenting with AHK, he found it was about 10 times more effective at hair growth than GHK. And it was as effective in his studies as minoxidil. So actually, Lauren Picard, he will sell a topical solution of AHK and minoxidil specifically for hair growth. Hair growth, though, is a medical claim, and that's not something we've done a study on, so we don't know if our product does that. But what we have looked at is what would be the role of AHK in both bone and muscle. So could we induce osteogenesis, turn on the stem cells in the bone and induce osteogenesis? So we did a pilot study, and we took women over the age of 50, and we did in fact find that we could stop bone loss and increase bone density with X49. So that was a significant difference from X39. We also did a study using X49 on its own, and then X49 and X39 together. And we found that X49 does in fact improve strength, stamina, and muscle mass, and decrease body fat. So we believe that this is through activation of satellite stem cells in the muscle. But the hypothesis that X49, because of its alanine content, improves athletic performance is true. So that's what we found the uses for the product to be.
And then what about the component of the Faraday cage? Do we have on that, or is that another hypothesis based on what you found? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so we did a pilot study on this. So I had this hypothesis that that essentially when God created us, he created us with the ability to upgrade. Mm-hmm. So that there were going to be things in the future that we were going to encounter as human beings, such as the heavy toxic burden that we find today, and that we would have the ability to adapt and survive. So one of these things, of course, is the advent of 4G, 5G, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. And, so we're being bombarded now by all this synthetic man-made radiation. And we know, going back to 3G, Colorado School of Medicine did some great work with infrared showing that cell phones do, in fact, increase the temperature of the brain and cause brain heating, right? And actually damage cells. So we know this is true. So what can we do about this? Well, copper is used to create Faraday cages, which block electromagnetic radiation. And we find already copper in the skin. As a matter of fact, on a doctor's call last night, what we were talking about was in my first patent, I was discussing how the copper in the skin and the iron in the blood actually form a Thomson-Zebek effect. And so human beings create a thermomagnetic field from heating the blood and cooling the skin. We get a temperature difference and we get a material difference. But in any case, what's important about this is our levels of copper decrease with age, and also our diets today are depleted of copper. And so what do we do about this? Well, the idea is that if we can take peptides that bind with copper and increase their presence in the skin, we might be able to use those peptides to block radiation. So there is actually, in fact, a study on copper peptide and its ability to protect women from radiation when women are going through chemotherapy and radiation treatments. So we did a preliminary study. We worked with a biochemist, and we took people that were electromagnetically sensitive, meaning that you give them a cell phone and they're going to experience intense pain and headaches. And we found that after 3 days of using X39 and X49, their levels of electromagnetic sensitivity dropped dramatically. Now, we did that just before the pandemic, and the study was going to finish up, but because of the pandemic, the clinic shut down, and we never got the opportunity to go back and finish the study. But we got preliminary results, and we're really excited about that.
Wow, thank you. That's great information. So I want to kind of piggyback off of that. I love how you're just feeding into my next question with talking about the pandemic. Health of our Americans and the world, the population, has definitely been damaged, our health, right? Our immune system, what we're dealing with. I always say people have a grocery list of issues, right? Of little symptoms, things they want to check off. Well, that list has now become like a family of 20 long for one person. So if you were to talk to the population today, 3 years later, what would you recommend for patches? What would be like your top 3 patches you would recommend for them to help with the symptoms, the issues that people are dealing with that have just really gotten out of control, honestly?
Yeah. So, the first thing is I'm not a medical doctor and we don't make any medical claims. So I want to take a step back for a moment and talk about maybe what the problem is in that light and then recommend a few things. So, first, at this point, I think we could say that nearly the entire population has the spike protein in their body, either through vaccination or through having COVID or being in proximity to someone that had COVID or people in a relationship, and they're gonna get the spike protein. So we know today that this is causing very serious long-term effects. And these effects, as we've seen in our studies, we did 2 studies on the mRNA vaccines. So what we see is that post-vaccination and post-getting COVID is that people have continued elevated levels of fibrinogen. They have elevated white blood cell counts, and they can even have mutation of the white blood cells. So unfortunately, many of the doctors that I speak to, we believe that over the next few years, there are going to be some dramatic increases in autoimmune disorders and cancer as a result of people's immune systems being worn out. So that's the bad news. The good news is that there are any number of different ways for people to get the inflammation under control and to decrease the burden on the immune system. So what are some things, that we know that can do that? First, I would reference some of the work that's being done by Dr. Peter McCullough. And he had recently referenced a study in Japan where nattokinase was used to dissolve the spike protein. Last July 4th weekend, I got COVID. And fortunately, it didn't hit me too bad. But coming out of that, I had some residual inflammation. I took the nattokinase and it went away. So I personally saw an improvement in my health from using nattokinase. I would also recommend that everyone should be on some type of glutathione precursor, and there's any number of different ones to choose from. NAC is certainly readily available, and that, of course, is going to help to support glutathione levels, which are going to help keep inflammation under control. Depending on a person's age and health, they may want to look at other things like curcumin or DMSO or any number of different antioxidants to support their antioxidant system. From our perspective, the only thing we can talk about is maintaining health. And to me, the top 3 patches for helping to manage inflammation would be X39, Eon, and glutathione. So, for example, someone could use X39 and glutathione during the day, and then the Eon patch at night. And that would be a really nice combination to help support the immune system and manage inflammation.
Perfect. That's a great combination. I love those 3 for everything. So, yep. David, are you able to share if someone, had a question on what would be a great recommendation for brain support, for brain and heart? Are you able to share some patches that could help support the neurological system and the cardiovascular system?
Yeah, well, given that our convention is going to be heart to heart, I'm actually going to be spending quite a bit of time, talking about that. And there is certainly a lot to talk about when it comes to cardiovascular health. First of all, I would recommend that everyone be going to their doctor at least once a year to get blood tests to, see where they are, maybe do an ultrasound on the carotid artery to look at whether or not they have arterial plaque, get some good diagnostics and find out what's going on. I'll get to the patches in a moment, but first thing is that most medical doctors are not trained in nutrition, and they're trained to prescribe drugs or recommend surgeries. And so they're not often aware that there are a number of natural remedies that are very, very effective for reversing things like arterial plaque. So, for example, pomegranate. There was a study that was done on pomegranate juice and SOD. As a matter of fact, the company Life Extension sells a product called endothelial defense, and they used to have a clinical study on their website, which I suppose the FDA caused them to take down. But what was shown in that study when it was available is that after about 9 months of taking a pomegranate extract, you could remove all of the arterial plaque. in the body, and people that were candidates for bypass surgery no longer required it. So there's a number of nutrients like that, like pomegranate extract, like buckwheat seed extract, that can help reduce arterial plaque and improve the endothelial lining. So at convention, I'm going to do, kind of like a comprehensive view of that. Also, as people age, I would really recommend that they go on a product to help support nitric oxide levels so they get good blood flow, they can keep their blood pressure in check. And there's any number of natural nutrients that will do that. Red Korean ginseng is really excellent at doing that. Beets, of course, are really great natural source of naturally occurring nitrites for elevating nitric oxide.